They laughed at his skin, questioned his worth, and whispered doubts behind fake smiles. But when the black valedictorian took the stage, every insult turned into stunned silence. The table is filled with food, laughter, and hidden venom. From the very first exchange, the comments begin to drip like slow poison, casual on the surface but sharp in their intent. One of the uncles leans in, smiling just a little too wide, and says, "Must be nice getting a head start with all the diversity programs these days." It's framed as a compliment, but the implication is clear. You didn't earn your place, you were placed. Another relative chuckles and chimes in, "They're really doing a great job including everyone now, huh?" Again, wrapped in the language of inclusion, but underneath it all is doubt. Doubt that brilliance could possibly come in the form of a young black man sitting across from them, poised and articulate. These aren't outright slurs, they're more insidious. Disguised behind polite smiles and soft chuckles, the comments are strategically delivered to question his merit without sounding overtly cruel. They're meant to keep him on the defensive, to remind him that no matter how far he's come, he's still being judged through a lens of race first, competence second. A cousin, just slightly older, looks at him with feigned curiosity. "So law school, huh? That's intense. What made you choose that?" The emphasis isn't lost. The subtext isn't wondering about passion or purpose. It's disbelief. Disbelief that someone like him could thrive in a system that wasn't designed for him. It's a question that carries an invisible asterisk. "Are you sure you belong there?" he answers smoothly, politely, measured in tone. His words are articulate, his demeanor unshaken. But beneath the table, his fingers pressed together tightly. He knows these games too well. The microaggressions, the passive doubt, the jokes that sound friendly but sting with centuries of prejudice. He's heard them in classrooms, at job interviews, and now at a dinner where he's supposed to feel welcomed. One of the older women across the table offers a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. "Well, I'm sure you'll do just fine," she says, as though surprised by the possibility. "It's great to see young men like you aiming so high." The "like you" is emphasized ever so slightly, a reminder that her expectations had already been low, and any success from him is an anomaly. The conversation continues, but the underlying message repeats, "Prove yourself," again, and again, and again. No matter the GPA, no matter the awards, no matter the countless nights spent studying when others were partying or sleeping. In this room, to this family, his presence requires explanation, justification, even subtle apology. Then come the comparisons. Another cousin, this one studying business, jumps in. "I thought about law too, but I didn't want to deal with all the memorizing and technical stuff. It's cool though, must be different for you." Different how? He doesn't ask. He knows the answer. The implication is that perhaps law wasn't as hard for him. Perhaps the system bent its rules. Perhaps someone like him got a shortcut. "Did you grow up in a neighborhood where they push law careers?" someone else asks with thinly veiled condescension. "You know, like those programs to uplift communities." It sounds innocent, curious even, but again the question masks a narrative that his success must be attributed to charity, not capability, that brilliance in someone like him is unnatural, requiring explanation beyond effort or talent. He nods, replies thoughtfully, and continues to engage with grace. But there's no escaping the fact that every comment, every subtle jab, is another attempt to chip away at his presence at the table. They are not challenging his intelligence directly. Instead, they are questioning its legitimacy. Even when compliments arrive, they arrive crooked. "Well, regardless of how you got there," one says while raising a glass, "making valedictorian is still a huge deal." Regardless of how you got there. A statement pretending to uplift while twisting the knife of doubt once more. Another raises a hypothetical. "Do you think law schools are lowering their standards to let more people in these days?" The question is directed to the table, not to him, but it might as well have been. The glance that follows says it all. It's not an intellectual question, it's a challenge, aimed directly at him, with a smile. He doesn't flinch. He's been trained by fire. This isn't new. He's learned to wear his success like armor, but the mental toll accumulates. Every jab, every joke, Every skeptical glance is another reminder of the distance between the achievements on his resume and the perception in their minds. By the end of the dinner, he has smiled more than he needed to, he has explained more than he should have, and he has absorbed more than they'll ever know. They walk away thinking he handled himself well, but he walks away knowing he was never meant to feel like he belonged. Not yet. But soon, they'll find out. While others slept, he studied, not occasionally, not during exams, but with relentless consistency. His nights were often lit by desk lamps and computer screens, with law books stacked like sentinels around him. Pages were not just read, they were absorbed, annotated, memorized, and internalized. This wasn't driven by fear of failure, but by an understanding of what he was up against. A world that would not forgive his mistakes, a profession that would scrutinize every success he earned, and a society that doubted his competence. The moment he walked into a room, there were no shortcuts, no favors, no legacy status cushioning his journey. Every scholarship was earned through merit, high GPAs, exceptional essays, powerful recommendation letters, and competitive interviews. Each line of financial aid represented not just academic excellence, but the ability to thrive under pressure. He didn't just meet criteria, he exceeded them. And yet, each award brought whispers from some corners, assumptions that his race, not his brilliance, tilted the scales in his favor. He was aware of the statistics. Black students made up a small percentage of the law school's population. Fewer still graduated with honors. The odds were never encouraging, but they were never a deterrent. He didn't aim to survive the system. He aimed to master it. Every class was an opportunity to prove, not to others, but to himself, that he belonged. He sat in front rows, engaged in debates, raised his hand when silence filled the room, and submitted assignments that reflected not just knowledge, but deep critical thinking and foresight. While others could afford moments of mediocrity, he carried the burden of representation. One slip, one average grade, one missed opportunity wouldn't just reflect on him, it would confirm the biases of those who believed he was a quota filler. That pressure was never spoken aloud, but it shaped his discipline. It drove him to proofread every paper thrice, to research cases until every precedent was understood from multiple angles, and to speak with clarity and confidence in every mock trial or oral exam. Ranked first in his class, his name topped a list filled with students who had doubted his presence from day one. Many hadn't said anything explicitly, but their expressions, the way conversations paused when he entered study groups, and the occasional surprise at his insights told him enough. He knew he wasn't just competing for grades, he was competing for space in a world that wasn't designed for him. But instead of folding under the weight of that challenge, he used it as fuel. There were moments of exhaustion, isolation, and mental fatigue. Not because the work was beyond his capacity, but because carrying the expectations of one's entire community while navigating a system laden with subtle exclusion takes its toll. Still, he showed up every day, dressed sharp, prepared thoroughly, and determined to earn not just a degree but undeniable respect. His success was not accidental. It was the result of meticulous planning, sleepless nights, and an unwavering belief in his purpose. He didn't broadcast his hardships. He didn't seek pity or applause for working part-time while studying full-time, or for sending money home when emergencies struck. These were not excuses for lowered performance. They were part of his lived experience, seamlessly integrated into his daily grind. He never asked for special treatment. All he wanted was fairness and the chance to stand on equal footing. He attended extra workshops, participated in moot court competitions, and consulted professors after class to deepen his understanding of jurisprudence, constitutional theory, and civil rights litigation. When others were celebrating the end of the week, he was often preparing for the next, mapping out readings and refining arguments. He understood that to stay ahead, he couldn't afford to slow down. The brilliance that would later silence the mockery didn't emerge overnight. It was forged over years of invisible work, sacrifices, focus, and the mental stamina to continue pushing when others might have stopped. No one saw the quiet mornings spent reviewing case law before sunrise, the weekends buried in libraries, while others traveled or partied, or the countless drafts rewritten until they became distinction-worthy. The honor of being named valedictorian was more than a title. It was a declaration that no whisper, no side glance, no passive comment about his luck or diversity advantage held any truth. It was the final line in a long argument he had been building quietly but powerfully across semesters, proving that excellence isn't gifted. It's earned, refined, and sustained by willpower and integrity. What they saw in the end was the result. What they missed was the journey, the discipline no one applauded, the barriers no one acknowledged, and the resilience no one understood. His was a quiet preparation, but its results would echo loud enough to be heard by every doubter in the phi. The ceremony unfolds as anticipated, with the formalities of academic tradition moving forward in practiced rhythm. The atmosphere is one of celebration and pride, a culmination of years of intellectual labor. Names are called, applause follows, and achievements are acknowledged. But then comes the moment that alters the energy in the room. The announcement of the valedictorian is met with a pause, a deliberate moment of silence. The name that follows carries weight, not simply because it denotes the top academic achiever, but because it is attached to someone many underestimated. It's not just a name to be read. It's a statement, a culmination, a turning point. The murmurs begin the moment the name is spoken. They do not erupt in excitement, but in disbelief and stunned recalibration. Among the attendees who had sat comfortably in their assumptions, there's a visible shift. Conversations that once carried undertones of casual prejudice now fall silent, interrupted by the reality of indisputable excellence. Some family members exchange looks, fleeting glances that attempt to mask their discomfort, but betray it nonetheless. The ones who had previously delivered backhanded compliments now wear expressions caught between forced support and genuine surprise. They didn't expect this. They had pegged him as intelligent, perhaps, but never the best, not the top, not the singular person chosen to represent the voice and intellect of the graduating class. The weight of the title valedictorian in a law school setting cannot be overstated. It's not just about grades. It's about consistency, discipline, critical thinking, and the ability to lead through words. It reflects a mastery over the most complex legal doctrines, the ability to articulate reason with precision, and the respect of both peers and faculty. To achieve this distinction in such an environment demands not only brilliance, but relentless effort. The family, once confident in their dismissive assumptions, is confronted with evidence they cannot ignore. There is no ambiguity in rankings. There is no subjective lens here. This is merit in its rawest form, calculated and acknowledged by the very institution they revere. For those who thought of him as simply a guest in a space built for others, the realization settles harshly. He belongs more than most. There is no room now for condescending tones or veiled remarks. The title itself dismantles every stereotype they comfortably hid behind. It is not up for debate. No amount of social maneuvering or attempts at polite dismissal can undo the reality that he, a young black man, has risen above every single peer. In one of the most demanding academic programs, the applause echoes, but within certain corners of the room it is delayed. Some hands hesitate, some faces try to mask disappointment. The contrast between those who celebrate freely and those who now feel threatened is telling. This isn't just about pride. It's about displacement. A narrative many believed in has just been fractured, and it wasn't broken by protest or confrontation. It was shattered by excellence. In that moment, he is not just a student being honored. He is the embodiment of proof. Proof that brilliance is not bound by color, background, or stereotype. Proof that systems of exclusion can be defied not only through resistance, but through undeniable achievement. His name on that list is not just a milestone for him, it is a mirror for others, forcing them to confront their biases, their disbelief, and their silence. The professors nod with approval, some with admiration, others with relief that their endorsement of him has been so thoroughly validated. Faculty who saw his potential early on now see that potential fulfilled, and those who may have harbored doubt are left with no ground to stand on. The data, the performance, the speech, all align to present a truth they can no longer deny. Within the family, even the ones who mocked and questioned begin recalibrating. The casual dismissals they had whispered are now weighty regrets. Every smug comment is now a memory tainted with embarrassment. The discomfort is not just in having been wrong, but in having been so publicly, undeniably proven wrong. The shift in energy is unmistakable. Where there was once condescension, there is now caution. Where there was mockery, now lingers awkward silence. No one dares to bring up affirmative action or special treatment now. Those narratives dissolve in the face of facts. The accolades are not tokens, they are earned. The standing ovation is not symbolic, it is deserved. For the first time, eyes that once looked through him now look up to him, and while the silence from some remains, it carries a different tone, not dismissive but reverent, almost apologetic. There is a collective acknowledgement, even if not spoken aloud, that they misjudged him, and no apology is needed. The title says everything. The address begins without flourish or theatrics. It does not seek pity, vengeance, or applause. Instead, it reflects the essence of intellectual maturity and emotional control. No bitterness seeps into the cadence. There are no veiled retorts or retributive barbs. It is brilliance in its most refined form, measured, insightful, and disarming in its sincerity. He opens with gratitude, sincere and grounded, not only for the professors and peers who challenged him, but also for the obstacles that shaped him. Rather than recount personal struggles in detail, he frames them within a larger narrative of resilience and collective striving. His voice does not waver as he addresses the weight of expectations placed on students, who must outperform not only their classmates, but also the stereotypes thrust upon them. He speaks of justice, not merely as a concept studied in textbooks, but as a lived experience, fluid, fragile, and often denied. He explores the dissonance between the law as written and the law as lived, highlighting how the most brilliant minds must learn not only to interpret statutes, but also to confront systems that are deeply flawed. His critique is subtle but sharp, embedded in historical references and reinforced with legal clarity. Quoting Thurgood Marshall, he reminds the audience that none of us got where we are solely by pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. He draws on this legacy not to diminish his accomplishments, but to contextualize them, honoring those who fought for spaces he now occupies. Every quote he invokes, whether from Marshall, Angela Davis, or Derek Bell, is intentional. It bridges past to present, theory to reality, and justice to its human cost. He transitions into a reflection on legacy, asserting that legacy is not inherited but built. It is not defined by bloodlines, wealth, or race, but by one's contribution to the pursuit of truth and equity. The audience hears, perhaps for the first time, the voice of someone who carries history within him and transforms it into vision. He reclaims the narratives that were denied to people like him and plants seeds for those who will come after. His words reject tokenism. He clarifies that being the first or the only in a room is not a badge of honor, but a signal that work remains unfinished. He challenges the legal community, his peers, future colleagues, to move beyond inclusion into meaningful transformation. He makes no apologies for his place at the podium. He does not soften his message to appease egos. He uplifts without pandering and critiques without alienating. He discusses the importance of grace, not as weakness but as strength. Grace, he says, is the choice to carry yourself with dignity when others would prefer you respond with rage. Grace is the ability to rise without stepping on others. Grace is the refusal to let someone else's prejudice define your power. His message lands with impact, not because it is loud, but because it is layered with wisdom earned through silence, discipline, and vision. He takes a moment to emphasize the role of humility in leadership. Intelligence, he states, is not marked by the need to dominate a conversation, but by the ability to listen, to synthesize, and to elevate others. The legal profession, he warns, must not become a mirror reflecting arrogance, but a vessel for accountability and social good. His peers nod, some moved, others stunned. No one expected a speech that could dismantle and rebuild minds within minutes. Then, the crescendo. He reminds the audience that this degree, this honor, is not an end. It is a responsibility. The law, he says, is only as just as those who interpret and apply it. It is a tool, not a shield for the privileged. In their hands rests the power to reinforce oppression or dismantle it. He calls upon each graduate to choose with courage, to practice with conscience, and to never forget the stories that never made it to courtrooms. Each word is deliberate, crisp, and powerful. There is no stutter, no filler. His voice becomes a conduit for every person who was overlooked, mocked, or underestimated. It becomes an indictment of prejudice, not through anger but through elevation. And in doing so, he redefines what power looks like: calm, articulate, accountable, and visionary. He ends not with a promise of greatness but with a call to integrity. Let our legacies not be written in verdicts won or salaries earned, he concludes, but in the justice we deliver, the dignity we protect, and the truths we refuse to silence. There is no immediate uproar, just stillness, eyes widened, faces contemplative. It is not the kind of speech that demands standing ovations through theatrics. It earns them through depth. Its echo lingers long after it ends. And in that moment, every laugh, every doubt, every insult once whispered is rendered irrelevant, not by confrontation but by clarity. The applause fades, but the impact of the moment remains suspended in the air, heavy, undeniable. What follows is not loud celebration, but quiet reckoning. Every expression, once painted with smugness or subtle ridicule, is now rewired with a mix of embarrassment, reflection, and unspoken apology. Those who once viewed him through a distorted lens must now confront the reality they tried to deny. He was not only worthy, he was exceptional. The family, once amused by their assumptions and casual in their prejudice, finds themselves in a position they did not anticipate, witnesses to their own failure in judgment. Their commentary, which had dripped with entitlement and ignorance, now echoes in their minds with painful clarity. The discomfort is not just social, it is moral. They had reduced him to a caricature, only to be confronted with his brilliance, poise, and depth on the largest stage. The whispers stop, replaced by a silence that says more than words could. It is the silence of guilt, the silence of reflection, the silence of those who realize they had an opportunity to embrace someone's greatness, but chose mockery instead. Some glance around to see how others are reacting, hoping they're shared. Discomfort might somehow lessen individual accountability, but there is no hiding from truth when it stands undisguised. There is no grand confrontation, no scolding, no declarations of offense, and that is what makes the impact more profound. The absence of retaliation elevates the shame. The dignity with which he carried himself throughout the entire experience only magnifies the contrast between who he is and who they revealed themselves to be. He didn't have to defend himself. His work, his speech, his position, each served as its own rebuttal, stronger than any argument. Regret manifests in subtle ways. The aunt who once patronized him now avoids eye contact. The cousin who questioned his qualifications stares at the floor. The uncle who cracked inappropriate jokes finds his smile slowly dissolve. No one speaks of what happened, but everyone feels it. The power dynamic has shifted, not out of fear but out of revelation. Beyond the family circle, the message begins to ripple outward. Others who witnessed the speech and saw the transformation in perception start sharing their reflections. Online platforms carry clips, photos, and quotes from the event. The narrative becomes viral, not just because of his achievement, but because of the lesson embedded within it. Social media floods with praise, not performative, but sincere. The story is told and retold as an example of grace dismantling prejudice without violence or bitterness. Comment sections fill with people recalling similar experiences, those who were judged unfairly, dismissed casually, or underestimated systematically. For many, his story becomes theirs. He becomes a symbol, not of perfection but of potential realized despite pressure, ridicule, and assumption. His face becomes associated not with controversy, but with clarity. News outlets begin covering the story, not merely as an academic success, but as a cultural moment. Think pieces analyze the way implicit bias operates in even the most educated spaces. Commentators reflect on how common it is for exceptional individuals to be doubted because of race, class, or background. His speech is replayed, quoted, and taught. What was once meant to be a personal celebration evolves into a public awakening. The family, now confronted with public attention, must reckon with their role in the story, not as proud supporters, but as initial antagonists who became silent observers of their own undoing. Some attempt to reframe their behavior, to soften their image in hindsight, but the timeline is unkind. The words were said. The tone was noted. The attitude was evident. The only response left is humility. The boyfriend, caught between love and lineage, finds clarity in the aftermath. He sees what his family failed to see. He recognizes the magnitude of what was achieved and the pain of what was endured silently. His own growth becomes part of the story, an internal confrontation with inherited biases and the strength to unlearn them. As the days pass, the attention shifts, but the memory remains. His name enters conversations about what it means to lead with integrity. The speech is archived in digital libraries and shared in academic forums. It becomes more than a moment. It becomes part of a movement, and through it all he remains composed. He does not gloat, nor does he seek revenge. His triumph speaks for itself. His excellence does not ask for approval, it commands it. His presence rewrote assumptions, not with anger but with achievement. The lesson is etched into the minds of everyone who witnessed it. Never reduce a person to the color of their skin, the accent of their voice, or the zip code of their upbringing. Greatness does not conform to stereotypes, and character cannot be measured by appearances. What lingers is not just the story of a black law school valedictorian, it is the story of accountability, of reversal without retaliation, and of justice, delivered without a gavel. The moment teaches, humbles, and transforms, and in that silent, undeniable reckoning, a powerful truth takes root and spreads. Never judge a man by the color of his skin, but by the content of your own character.